The Book of Boba Fett Season 1 Episode 2 The Tribes of Tatooine is finally here, throwing us right back into the rise of Boba Fett's brand new criminal empire and his goals to rule the underworld. With respect, of course. We get some awesome looks at the major moments of his life as flashbacks, as well as a glimpse at some very infamous crime syndicate rivals from Solo: A Star Wars Story and the Clone Wars. Not to mention we get a massive appearance from a beastly black-furred wookie from the comics. So let's break down everything that went down in the episode and how it connects to the Star Wars books, comics and TV shows. And make sure you drop your episode rating out of 10 in the comments below and subscribe for a whole lot more Book of Boba Fett content throughout the show. So the episode actually kicks off with the previously on segment giving us a recap of Boba escaping the Sarlacc and his time with the Sand People. These recaps are more common in the Star Wars animated shows rather than live action, but it's definitely cool to see. The proper episode though kicks off with Fennec escorting the red-clothed assassin from last episode back to Jabba's palace, which is of course now Boba's. We get some awesome interior shots of the palace, which are actually all based off of unused footage from Return of the Jedi. Back on the throne, Boba demands that the prisoner reveal who he's working for, but the slimy assassin stays silent and even curses Boba out, obviously angering him. Boba's droid 88 then says he's a member of the Nightwind assassin group, who are actually a group in Star Wars Legends. In Legends, they were a fake resistance group set up by the Empire to lure in rebellious citizens on the planet Goroth Prime, and then arrest them once they joined. I don't think they'll have the same purpose in this show, but it'll be interesting to see how they're connected. And also, 88 is the same droid we see in Return of the Jedi who's horribly torturing a gonk droid, which is absolutely awesome. Fennec then says that the Nightwind are just lowly assassins and you're really just paying for the name. 88 however disagrees and tells Boba of their legendary status among the underworld. Not willing to wait any longer, Fennec Shand pulls the lever and drops the Nightwind assassin down into the legendary Rancor pit from Return of the Jedi, and this finally terrifies him enough to speak, telling them that the mayor sent him. Now the pit was empty, but I was half expecting Muchi from the Bad Batch to show up here, considering what Luke did to the other Rancor named Patissa. Moving back to the center of Mos Espa, Boba Fett is filled with anger at the attempt on his life and storms back to the mayor with his prisoner. On the streets we see a Kyuzo, the same species as Embo, Trandoshans, obviously Bosk species, and a range of other cool off-worlders. Arriving at the mayor's headquarters, the underlings try to keep him out, but Boba isn't having any of it, and simply storms into the back room to finally come face to face with his rival. Many people actually thought that this was Pedro Pascal, the voice of Din Djarin, doing the voice for the Ithorian mayor, but it's actually the showrunner of the series, Robert Rodriguez himself, which is pretty cool. After entering the main room of the mayor, he immediately has the assassin killed so that he can't talk, which infuriates Boba. Mok Shaiz, the mayor, then warns Boba that he should look deeply at who is really behind the assassination attempt, since the mayor himself has no motive and no reason to do it. Following this, Lord Fett and Fennec are sent back to Garsa Fwip's cantina, and they have no idea what's going on, but Boba says that Garsa is sweating like a Gumpta on Mustafar. As we all know, Mustafar is the lava world where Anakin and Obi-Wan had their showdown, as well as being the location of Darth Vader's castle. And I'll explain why Darth Vader's castle is actually more connected than you might think later in the video. Immediately after this, Garsa mentions that the twins have laid claim to the land which Boba Fett currently holds, which, as we soon see, are two twin Hutts which have managed to rise to the top after the entire Hutt Council was wiped out. Now for those of you who don't know, in the War of the Bounty Hunters comic series set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, Qi'ra, who is the leader of the Crimson Dawn crime syndicate, steals Han Solo's carbonite frozen body from Boba and lures Darth Vader to her location with it. Eventually a battle ensues and Vader slaughters the entire Hutt Council, leaving Jabba as the only remaining Hutt crime lord. This makes it very easy for Bib to take over after Jabba's death at the hands of Leia. Now once this happens, the two Hutt twins are carried in on a litter and lay claim to Mos Espa, which Boba is not going to accept. In a show of force, they bring out one of their warriors who is a black-furred Wookiee known as Black Krssantan. This is actually a very renowned Wookiee from the Dr. Aphra and Darth Vader comics, and he has actually done bounty missions directly with Boba himself on the orders of Darth Vader. Now the reason Boba calls him a gladiator in this scene is because he was originally exiled and captured from Kashyyyk and trained by the horrid Zonti brothers in a gladiator fight pit, all from the Dr. Aphra comic run. Black Chrysanthen is an amazing character from the comics, so it's awesome to see him show up here. You can also see him give Boba a familiar glance as he leaves, because they have so much history together in the comics. After this, we find out that these Hutts are actually twin cousins of Jabba, and we do actually know a few of them in canon who are still alive. So for the female Hutt, I'd say it could be Cracker, who is the cousin of Jabba, and recently showed up in the Star Wars Adventures Return to Vader's Castle comic series. She was estranged from Jabba for many years because she threatened to kill him, so she would certainly want the Empire from her dead cousin. Not to mention she's very close to the pinky shade, similar to what we see in the show. Now for the male Hutt, we have about 3 options. The first is Tagta the Hutt, who is the second cousin of Jabba, and appeared in the Clone Wars UK comics and the Hutt Gambit book. Because he's more of a bluey purple, I don't think it's him. Next is Hiro the Hutt, who is the son of Zero the Hutt, Jabba's uncle. Yes, I know these Hutt names get confusing. and Hiro the Hutt has appeared very recently in the Galaxy's Edge Black Spire novel, as well as being mentioned in the Tales from the Galaxy's Edge VR game. Because he's featured in so much recent content, especially around the Black Spire and Galaxy's Edge, I'd say there's a good chance that it's him, despite the fact we don't know what he looks like just yet. Lastly, we have Grabala the Hutt from the Freemaker Adventures, and just because he's a LEGO character and doesn't look similar at all, I'd say it's not him. So my final picks for these two Hutts are Hiro and Cracker. Following this whole debacle, Boba Fett vows that the Hutts will have to kill him if they want his throne, and then he returns to his Bacta tank so the flashbacks can begin. Travelling back out into the wild desert of Tatooine, we now see how Boba used to learn the Tusken Gaffi Stick for combat, which he went on to use on Tython against the Stormtroopers in The Mandalorian. The Gaffi Stick is a traditional weapon used by the Sand People, and although it's primitive, it can be extremely dangerous in the right hands. Not to mention that we finally get confirmation that the substance that Boba and the Tuskens have been drinking from is actually the milk of a black melon, which we first see in the Star Wars 2015 comic with Obi-Wan Kenobi, another awesome little tie-in to that series. Now during the training, the clan of Tuskens is interrupted by their pet Massive going rabid, and they hear the ominous approach of an incoming vehicle. Honestly, it sounded quite like the scream that Obi-Wan tried to imitate in A New Hope to scare the Sand People away, but this time it was arguably something worse. A rolling sand train filled with members of the Pykes syndicate rushes by, blasting the Tusken tribe without hesitation. The Pykes syndicate are very big in the spice trade and can be seen heavily in both the Clone Wars Season 7, as well as Solo: A Star Wars Story on Kessel. They pretty much run things in the spice mines of Kessel, and they're addicted to their own product. If you watch Solo, you can see that their suits have spice tubes connected so that they can constantly inhale as they work. Following this, Boba offers to stop the rolling train and be back by morning, which leads him to a very familiar location known as Tosche Station at Anchor Head. Tosche Station actually featured prominently in the deleted scenes of A New Hope, where Luke's friend, Cammy and Fixer lounge around all day, and where they watch the Star Destroyer chase Leia's ship from overhead. When Boba enters, he sees Cammy and Fixer still lounging around in Tosche Station all these years later, although he doesn't know who they are, and of course they're much older. They are then terrorized by the Nikto gang members who we see steal the water in the last episode, and Fixer finally stands up for himself for once, but immediately gets into a brawl with the gang members. Luckily for them, Boba Fett is there to save the day and obliterate the gang members with the Gaffi Stick skills he just learned from the Tusken tribe. After this, Boba steals a bunch of speeders from Tosche Station and begins the long and arduous task of teaching the Sand People how to use them. After much failure, he eventually teaches them everything they need to know for the train heist, including grappling, jumping, and boarding the vessel, very much like Solo: A Star Wars Story and the train heist on Vandor. Eventually, the time comes for Boba and his Tusken raiders to raid the train, and they do surprisingly well, managing to struggle their way inside. After killing many of the Pykes and sending the pilot droid flying out of the window, Boba manages to do a pretty good job stopping the large vehicle in its tracks and unloading all of the loot inside. The Tuskens then round up the Pyke Syndicate members on board and unload all of their goods. Here we finally get to see the Pykes without their masks for the first time in live action. We did already see this in the Clone Wars Season 7, but it's nice to finally see them in live action. And I've just got to say that the masks that these Pykes are wearing could actually be a tribute to Darth Maul, who we know was the former leader of the Shadow Collective, and of course Crimson Dawn. We know from the Clone Wars that the Pykes were part of the Shadow Collective under Maul, so there may have been a split after his death between those who followed qi'ra as the new leader, and those who wanted to stick to the traditional teachings of Darth Maul even after he was gone. But yeah, tell me in the comments how much you think this looks like a tribute to Darth Maul by the Pykes. I think there's definitely got to be a connection there. Their leader is then brought forward and is found to be transporting illegal Sassana spice from the slave mines of Kessel, which of course the Pykes operate, and we've been to many times in Star Wars Rebels, Solo, the Clone Wars, and of course mentioned in A New Hope. Sassana spice actually even goes all the way back to one of the first 1977 Star Wars comics, so that is a pretty deep cut. Cutting back to the Tusken campsite, we get a small history lesson about their past, where we learn that ever since the oceans dried up, the Tuskens were forced to stay hidden, and some tribes survived by killing, but this tribe didn't. This also recanonizes some of the old story from the Dawn of the Jedi comics and KOTOR, where we learned that Tatooine was once a lush green world, but was glassed by the Krssantan Infinite Empire after a slave uprising there. The orbital bombardment transformed the planet into the sandy world we know today, and even forced the Tuskens and the Jawas to devolve from their original species. Boba is then given a very weird gift by the Tuskens, which happens to be a small lizard. Hilariously, it jumps down Boba's throat through his nose, and he apologizes profusely for swallowing it, but that was the intention. The lizard will guide him through the head according to their folklore. This then triggers a flurry of flashbacks covering Boba in his armor, the oceans of Kamino where he was born, the Sarlacc swallowing him, and the death of his father at Geonosis from Attack of the Clones. This whole saga then leads him to collect a branch from back in the days when Tatooine still had the oceans and lush forests, which he takes back to the tribe and is eventually awoken from the dream state. At this point, he is officially a member of the tribe and is even given their traditional clothing, the same one that we see in the Mandalorian Season 2 episode. Boba then uses the branch he collected from the Fever Dream to craft his own Gaffi Stick, making him a true Tusken Raider. And to end off the episode, Boba Fett begins a hearty Tusken ritual, and the entire tribe dances around the fire in a traditional pattern, welcoming their newest member. So that is my full breakdown of Star Wars The Book of Boba Fett Season 1 Episode 2, The Tribes of Tatooine. Let me know what your episode rating is out of 10 in the comments below, and remember to hit the bell button while you're down there. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.